Everyone wonders. I personally spend way too much time wondering. Do you know those moments where your friend is staring off into space? Or those moments where you snap back to reality after being deep in thought? That's me like all of the time. It's kind of awkward, but oh well, it's just me. There's just so much to wonder about when it comes to life, our world, faith, and even other people. I wonder things like, why can't ostriches fly when they have gigantic wings? It just doesn't make sense. Or what makes a person mad enough to cut off a mom in a minivan on the freeway? How can we carry supercomputers in our pockets, but printers are still the size of miniature horses? Like, nobody's figured that out yet? Or why are there more stars than our eyes can even see out there in space? Like, what's the point of all of that? This is just a small sample of the random things that I wonder about. I mean, these are pretty basic questions. They're weird, I get it, but they're basic. But the truth is, we wonder about some of life's biggest questions too. We wonder things like, why are we here? Is my existence just one big coincidence? How is it that I'm alive during this specific moment in history and not another? Is God actually real? I mean, we all have really big questions. Why? Because we're all full of curiosity. We wonder because we're curious. We spend time daydreaming, processing, and asking questions because we're curious about the way things really work. We want answers. I mean, we crave certainty. If we can find answers to the things that we wonder about most, then we'll find more clarity about this thing called life. And who doesn't want that? I mean, since the beginning of time, people have been trying to figure out the point of all of this. Our curiosity leads us to try so many routes to finding the answers that we're searching for. It's why the world is full of religions that promise to be the right one. It's why it's so trendy right now to explore spirituality in ways like balancing your energy or using crystals and manifesting a different reality than the one that you're currently in. It's why science has sparked so many debates about what is true and what is not. We're all looking for answers. And in today's culture, it seems like we're willing to try anything to find them. Here's the thing though. Sometimes it can feel like Christianity and curiosity cannot coexist, like they can't work together when it comes to faith. There are a lot of ways to talk about faith. And here's what we mean when we say faith in this series. Faith is a confidence in who God is and how that informs the way we live. And for some people, that feels like the exact opposite of science. It feels like science is often about looking for certainty. I mean, it's literally a way to take our curiosities and test them so that we can gain some confidence about the way things work. On the other hand, our ideas about faith tend to feel more like they're about the mystery of God. It's about having faith in an unseen, unexplainable, and incomprehensible God. This is why often it feels like science and faith cannot coexist for some people. But what if that's just not true? What if in a world where we're trying all sorts of different things to find answers to what we wonder about most, we didn't have to pick between two of the most popular approaches? In other words, what if we don't have to wonder if science and faith can coexist? In this series, we're going to take a few weeks to explore if it's possible for science and faith to both play a part in helping us explore the things we wonder about. To start, we need to go all the way back to the beginning. Not just the beginning of the debates between science and faith, I'm talking about the beginning of everything. There's this ancient document called Genesis that is a part of the Bible. It tells the story of the beginning of everything. The author tells the story of how the universe, living creatures, and people came to be. There are so many details and concepts that have been debated for a very long time. And I actually think those conversations can be really helpful and healthy. But I think they can also take our focus off of the most important point of the entire book of Genesis. See, I actually think the first line of Genesis might just be the most important one when it comes to all of the things that we wonder about. Check it out. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, this one sentence is often complicated because we get into all sorts of debates about how this happened. That's most likely one of the main arguments you've heard when it comes to the differences between faith and science. The way everything came to be has been a topic of curiosity for a very long time. Think about it. What different views on the way the world was created have you learned or heard about or maybe even considered yourself? Take about 30 seconds and think about your own response to that question. Okay, while there's a lot of debate out there about how all of creation came to be, that wasn't really the point of what was written at the beginning of the book of Genesis. See, this one statement isn't an argument against science. Instead, it's meant to indicate that there is a God who is behind everything that exists. This doesn't mean that science shouldn't be something Christian people leverage to find answers to life's biggest questions. This sentence from Genesis is simply pointing to the God behind that science. If you've ever felt like faith requires you to leave behind your intellect or your desire to understand the way things work, I'm so sorry. Because in reality, that couldn't be further from the truth. Now, on the other hand, if you've ever felt like science requires you to reject some of the mystery of God to only embrace certainty, that's just not how legitimate science works. Because in reality, the two actually work together in a way that can help us understand more about both. Science addresses how things came to be, and faith connects to who is behind it all. See, science is the pursuit of understanding our world, and both science and faith can work together because both fuel our curiosity. And in our curiosity is where we can encounter a very real God, a God who can choose to speak through both science and faith. In fact, according to Jesus, using your mind is really important. When he was asked what is most important, he said, "Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind." Jesus said it's important to love God with all of who you are, including your mind. See, God doesn't want our understanding of faith to mean shutting down our minds. God doesn't want us to stop exploring, wondering, and asking questions. Instead, God says, love me with all of your mind. And as we wonder with our minds, we can also remember that the author of Genesis shows us faith is getting to know the God behind it all. Even as we explore science with our minds, we can be confident that we're getting to know the God who created everything. Faith allows us to be okay with the mystery around us while trusting that God, who is so much bigger than our understanding, is the one behind it all. This is how science and faith can coexist. See, science is actually a gift to us, not an enemy of faith. And as you explore science, your faith can expand. When you lean into faith, you're using your curiosity about the world to embrace the fact that some parts of life will always be mysterious because the God who created everything is bigger than we can imagine. You might not be able to understand everything fully, but as you explore your curiosity using science, you get to know the God behind it all even better. Plus, you discover more mysteries that can expand your faith. In fact, we asked someone who studies all of this and plans to go to space someday about why scientific exploration matters. Her name is Alyssa Carson, and here's what she had to say.
So why does exploring space matter to humanity? My name is Alyssa Carson, and I will be answering that for you guys. So the biggest reason why I think that exploring space matters is really just the amount of technology that we gain from actually exploring space. So there are so many different things that you probably use in your day-to-day life that was either invented for space travel or by the space industry in some way, and we now use it for very normal things. Examples include like wireless headphones, vacuums, just little things here and there, like I said, that you're going to be using was invented for the purpose of space travel. Another huge benefit of exploring space is, of course, the knowledge that we gain. So whether that is science, looking for signs of life, discovering more about the universe, any and all science questions that we have. But overall, I really do think that the space industry, pretty much everything that we do in space comes back down to Earth in some way, whether that's money, whether that's ideas, whether that's technologies, any and all science questions that we have. But overall, I really do think that the space industry, pretty much everything that we do in space comes back down to Earth in some way, whether that's money, whether that's ideas, whether that's technologies, everything that happens in space always comes back down to Earth. And that's one of the many things that I love about space travel, and especially when we start looking towards the future of space travel. So even with big ideas like going to Mars and going and possibly living on other worlds, we are still solving problems that happens here on Earth. There's loads of advantages in doing things in space. It provides pretty much a huge resource to us that is always there, and hopefully we will continue to explore it to learn more. Hopefully you learned a little bit about space travel and hopefully have a little bit more interest in it. So thanks for having me.
Okay, that's fascinating. And one of the most interesting parts of space exploration, at least to me, is that we've discovered that the universe is expanding constantly. The only way we know this is because we are constantly exploring. We are gaining certainty through scientific discovery of more and more of the universe every single day. We find more stars, more galaxies, more planets, and more black holes. As we do this, we become more certain about the way the universe works, and we also realize that there is so much that we don't understand. Through our discovery of more and more of the universe, we've become certain about the fact that the universe is constantly expanding. Basically, in our quest for certainty, we've discovered that the one thing that is certain about space is that it's full of ever-expanding mystery. I know, my brain hurts too, but that's kind of the point. We are people with incredible minds, capable of exploring and finding answers to really big questions. At the same time, as our understanding grows, we begin to discover that there is so much more mystery to explore. We fully lean into science to understand as much as possible, but then we live by faith, knowing that there is so much that remains beyond our ability to understand. And God and science sort of work the same way. We explore our curiosity using science, and when we do, we gain more certainty about how things work. At the same time, legitimate science winds up leading to greater mystery about life and God. It leaves us even more curious about the way everything works. The more science we study, the better we understand how God has done things, and the more questions we have about how and why God has done them. It's faith that allows us to embrace that mystery, explore God more, and get to know Him better, even though we can't possibly find all of the answers about a God that's bigger than our human understanding. At the end of the day, as you explore science, your faith can expand. You don't have to pick one or the other. The goal of science does not need to be to disprove God. Yes, there are definitely some forms of science aimed at trying to cause us to question the existence of a creator, but that's not the only kind of science. Most science seeks to find certainty about things we don't currently understand. There's nothing wrong with this desire, as long as we stay humble enough to admit that no matter how much we understand, we realize that there will always be mystery because God is bigger than what we can understand. And I want to be real about the fact that mystery in today's culture can feel like an excuse for not having an answer. But in reality, every part of life is mysterious. Even some of the smartest people who've ever lived embrace this idea. Arguably, the most famous scientist in history, Albert Einstein, once said this: "The most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion which stands at the cradle of true art and true science. Whoever does not know it and can no longer wonder, no longer marvel, is as good as dead and his eyes are dimmed." His point is that mystery is what keeps us curious and keeps us searching for more. We should aim to understand as much as we can and be okay with the fact that part of being human is knowing that there's so much beyond what we can imagine. For Christians, this means that there are things about God that we can be certain about and things about God that will always remain mysterious. So, if we want to begin exploring science in ways that help our faith expand, where do we start? Here are a couple of simple ways for you to start embracing both science and faith right now. First, be curious. Be committed to staying curious about what you don't understand and open to what you may never fully know. This is one of the best things about you all as teenagers. You ask great questions and you're naturally curious about life and how things work. Please, 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 for the sake of humanity, don't ever lose that. And then, embrace wonder and mystery. Yes, we wonder why or how things work, but we can also be filled with wonder about the things that we can't explain. This is especially true when it comes to God. It's okay that we don't know everything because we can trust that God is for us. And you might be like, wait a second, that's a big jump. I can trust that God is in my corner? How? Well, we're going to talk more about this in the days ahead, but God's most mysterious miracle was raising Jesus back to life. And the whole reason Jesus died in the first place was to prove how far he would go for love. Then the resurrection proved that everything Jesus said and did was legitimate. And what he emphasized most is that God loves people like you and me. So, we may have a ton of questions that we're wondering about, which is really good, by the way, but we can also be filled with wonder about the truth of God's love for us. We can also keep learning. We should be curious and keep learning because science can give us answers that point to the God behind it all. Embracing wonder doesn't mean we stop discovering. We should seek to keep learning because what we learn can strengthen our faith. Another pastor named Andy Stanley says that when we explore science and discover how things work, our response can be, so that's how God did it. I think that's a great way to approach the discoveries that science has made. This approach keeps you open to discoveries science has made while also allowing you to be filled with wonder about the God behind it all. And then finally, expand your faith. Consider expanding your definition of faith. It's so much more than a label that we can slap onto whatever we don't understand. It's what we do understand too. It's a confidence in what we know about and have experienced with God. And that confidence helps us continue to explore our doubts, questions, and uncertainties without fear or worry of what we'll find when we do. God wants your faith to expand and isn't intimidated by our questions. Okay, so we are just starting this journey into exploring the relationship between science and faith. But before we go any further into this conversation, I don't want you to lose sight of how great it is to wonder. We are alive at a unique time in history where we have access to more information than ever before, thanks to advancements in science. Plus, we are more curious about the things that we don't yet understand. That's why it seems almost everyone is searching for answers. We are curious because we were made to wonder. And when we wonder, we can actually grow in our love for and relationship with God. Now imagine if the things that you wonder about aren't off limits to God. Imagine if God is actually okay with your questions and your curiosity and your desire to know more. Imagine if you could go through life exploring how things work through science and being okay with not understanding everything, embracing wonder. That is what's possible when you follow Jesus. That is what it can look like to be a Christian in a time unlike any other in history. That is why, as you explore science, your faith can expand. When you head to small groups, I want you to be thinking about your response to this question. How can science and faith begin to work together in your own life?